This week, Blaine Frederick from Alcatraz AI is with us to discuss making physical security better and easier. Then, in the enterprise security news, the latest cybersecurity fundings, Sierra acquires Trail Security, Sophos acquires SecureWorks, new companies and products, more coverage on CyberStart's Sunrise program, AI can control your PC now, public cybersecurity companies are going private, Splunk and Palo Alto beef, and then finally, we've got two interviews for you from Okta's annual Octane conference. In the first interview, Mandy Logan speaks with Damon McDougall, Global Cyber Protection Lead at Accenture. Then Mandy talks with Punit Minocha, EVP Business Development and Corporate Strategy at Zscaler. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Digital threats evolve rapidly, making it difficult for security teams to keep pace. Tying security automation and orchestration is different from traditional SOAR. It allows teams to move faster and make better decisions in real time. With Tynes, analysts and engineers have everything they need to automate the processes they're closest to, regardless of complexity. Built by security practitioners for security practitioners, Tynes powers mission-critical security workflows at McKesson, Canva, and Mars. Start building for free at securityweekly.com/Tynes. Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1Password. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy Halloween. This is episode 382, recorded on Thursday, October 31st, 2024. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Admiral of ASPM, the Captain of Content, Katie Teitler-Santullo. How are you, Katie?
I'm well. How are you on this Halloween almost Eve?
I missed an opportunity to make that, do like a spooky version of that, but oh well. We've passed it.
Maybe in post they can add some bats flying around your head or something.
Yeah, there we go. I'll leave that up to Sean and Alex. Any favorite Halloween stuff that you do on Halloween or watch on Halloween? You have any Halloween traditions?
So we get kids in my neighborhood, not a lot, but I always have to be here. I sit out on my porch. I decorate my porch. I make sure that it's, the lights on, everybody knows. I don't know that I have any other traditions other than that, but my favorite Halloween moment as of late was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I had this little girl come up my steps, and my steps are actually pretty steep for a little person. Mm-hmm. And she kind of tripped forward a little bit, and she was dressed as a princess or, some kind of magic fairy, and she accidentally hit me on the head with her little wand. And I said, oh my goodness, I made a joke out of it about, how I was going to be so lucky for the rest of the night. And it made her happy and smile because, little kids, if they trip, they'll sometimes get upset. But I always, every year I remember that. And she was just such a cute little girl.
Nice. Very nice. It's the most memorable Halloween tradition that I had is every year I would read a book to my kids, a book by Ray Bradbury called The Halloween Tree. And for those not into reading books, there is an animated version by Hanna-Barbera with, I think it's Leonard Nimoy doing the voice of the main character. So really fun story that I enjoyed and just kind of stuck with over the years, turned into a tradition.
I do also remember my elementary school music teacher, Mrs. Kyoto. And she used to play this Halloween song, HALLOWEN spells Halloween. And we didn't have that after elementary school. And clearly elementary school was a while. So in my head, I do sing that in October as well.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that stuck with you for sure.
Yeah. And Mrs. Kyoto, pulling that out from the archives.
All right. Jumping into today's first interview. Today's topic is physical security with biometrics. We're excited to have Blaine Frederick, the VP of Product at Alcatraz AI, with us today. Alcatraz makes biometric access control products focused on face-based authentication. Blaine has over 20 years of experience in the physical security industry with a specific expertise in the biometric space. Welcome, Blaine.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Any Halloween traditions you want to share before we dive into it?
Well, I'm going over to watch my nephew trick or treat this evening. But in terms of traditions, nothing spectacular.
All right. So yeah, this is interesting. We don't often cover physical security, but I think more and more the lines are kind of being blurred between biometrics and biometrics are everywhere. Yeah, almost I would say almost 100% of phones that people have today do some form of biometrics. So certainly that part of it is relevant, I think, to everybody. And I used to be a pen tester. I used to do physical pen testing. So, physical security is not unfamiliar to me. And I've been through some pretty horrible systems, maybe secure, but certainly not convenient. And that's kind of where I want to start today. You've been in this industry for a while. So I think we've had iris scanning for a very long time, right? Like we've had different biometrics at least high security areas like certain data centers, fingerprints as well, handprints even. And just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on like how far the industry has come and what you've seen change in terms of like the quality of the biometrics and things like that. Like what is it today versus what's that experience like versus 20 years ago, late 90s, early 2000s, the kind of first versions that we remember and we maybe sometimes see in the movies?
Sure. No, great question. And you're totally right. It's a different ball game. To be honest, when I started, the first biometric system we put in was a hand scanner, and you'd have to go and punch in a pin, you put your hand in there and, wait for, 5 or 10 seconds to get authenticated. And of course you're touching something. And so that's especially nowadays, people don't like to do that. And kind of anecdotally, a couple of years ago, we were actually swapping out one of those types of devices, and they had one of those like Purell stations right next to the hand scanner. But it was pretty obvious that people didn't know which order you were supposed to do it. Either use the Purell and so you ended up with this gelatinous goo on top of it, and It was just absolutely disgusting. So the technology has changed a ton. Friction back then was really bad, and to some degree today is depending on the modality, you still have to stop and wait. Fingerprints are still around, and really, when you look at the modalities, face is really emerging as the one that's the most user friendly. And in fact, the goal is for you to not even realize that you're using a biometric. You want it to be completely frictionless. And products like ours honestly are terrible for the movies because it's not at all dramatic, right?
There's no drama.
Lasers coming. No, there's no lasers scanning your face or anything like that. And so it's we won't make it in Hollywood, but it is it's great for the users, and you still have that kind of high level of security and convenience, and very few things in life kind of give you those two things together.
You could make it dramatic without changing the system. You could put like a TV in there and have hire a company to put together this fun 3D dramatic thing. Like you would make the thing take 10 seconds or 5 seconds longer. But you basically just taking their face and making a video file showing laser scanning the face and all that. You could make I don't know. I think that would be kind of fun. At least for a demo or something like that for somebody showing off their knock or sock or data center or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, I think I guess if Tom Cruise calls, why we'll see if we can put that in the product development queue for sure.
And it's maybe getting ahead of myself. I was going to ask this a bit later, but one of the things we've noted with passwordless is some people find it a bit uncomfortable. They get used to that level of friction. To them, that friction means that the process was secure, right? Like they had to go through, more of a routine, almost like the same with healthcare. Like as we simplify blood draws and things like that. It's almost this kind of uncanny feeling like they didn't do it right, like the results aren't going to be correct. Do you run into any of that, removing friction to that point to where people are like, can that really be secure? Can it really be that easy?
We definitely have people that are shocked at the kind of the passive nature of it. And there's a quote: "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." And
Magic, yeah.
I think that that's kind of what people see when they first use it. We'll be at a trade show and people will interact with it and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, how did that happen? Where was the device?" Things like that. We haven't really gotten pushback in terms of that, but rather people are excited about it. Now, we do have customers that do want even a higher level of security. So, we couple it with, a badge or a pin still for multi-factor authentication. And of course, multi-factor is everywhere on the cyber side. And so, especially in data centers and these high security areas, people are accustomed to providing two mechanisms for authentication. And we still see that a lot.
And just to kind of clarify on what we're talking about here for the audience, I presume this is a camera system you would put in some kind of physical location, where you have a security perimeter, a physical security perimeter, maybe some kind of physical security control, like a door or a turnstile or something like that. And this camera is good enough to grab you from a distance, so that by the time you get there. Explain to us kind of the hardware component of this, and who uses it. Also, just businesses, just data centers, or would you also see this in like a multi-tenant apartment building, something like that in a big city?
Sure. So kind of on the hardware side, so the device itself is a purpose-built device designed to do capture biometrics. It's a product that we design, and you're absolutely right. You put it in turnstiles, next to a door, anywhere where you would have a badge reader. So you think about badging into your office, anywhere where one of those badge readers is located, you can either replace or enhance that badge reader with our product. And we connect in with all of the existing access control systems that are out there, and ultimately that's what manages the authorization part of that. We do the authentication piece, and it does the authorization piece. And in terms of where we're deployed, it's kind of across the board. People often ask, what are our key verticals, and really we apply to virtually every vertical, from stadiums and arenas to financial services to healthcare, because every place has either a location where they're trying to move people through frictionlessly. So in a high rise, people going through turnstiles, they want to move people very quickly, to a data center, and everybody has data centers these days where they want to have multi-factor for that, or labs. We do a lot of, like I said, in sports where athletes typically don't have a place to carry their card when they're going in and out of the locker room. So it's a great opportunity for that. VIP type areas, often the C-suite again, for that convenience factor, but high security. So we're really kind of all over the board in terms of where we deploy. We are primarily a commercial product, like we're B2B. We have not deployed in a kind of a B2C, like you wouldn't see us at Lowe's or Home Depot or anything like that. But we have done a number of like high-end condominium complexes and places like that, where we would be, in the elevator or other secure areas, and really just for the convenience factor.
And also, out of curiosity, do you see other forms of biometrics going away? I mean, certainly, I can't remember the last time I saw a hand scanner, with mixture of barbecue sauce and Purell smeared all over it. But I do recall seeing fingerprint readers and things like that. Badge scanners. I feel like badge scanners are one of those things that's going to be hard to get people away from, just because just the physical interaction is so familiar that seems like one of those things that if you removed it, people would be like, I don't know if this is secure or not.
Certainly, I think that, yeah, I think the physical credential is something that will be around for a long time. In terms of different modalities, a lot of customers are moving away from some of those legacy modalities. Of course, there's a place, for different ones depending on what the situation is. So Iris, as an example, is the most accurate of all the modalities, and so. If you're looking to be able to identify, billions of people, then that's the right modality there. In fact, India has their whole citizen, population in a database, and that's how they do transactions and so on and so forth. So those kinds of things will be around. I think for general purpose access control or the types of applications that we're working in, I think face will continue to be the dominant, just because it's convenient. You don't have to stop. There's enough data there that you can, from a distance, be able to authenticate people. You don't have to, stop moving, things like that. So those will be there. And then in terms of other credentials, I think what you'll see probably is a blending. A trend right now are mobile credentials, where they basically put the data that's on your badge on your phone. And then you can, present your phone to that reader, or in some cases even, your watch if you have a smartwatch. And so there's still some push to those kinds of technologies. And so you'll see kind of a shift to that. Ultimately, I believe that people will want to stop carrying credentials around altogether. And so at the end of the day, I think biometrics will be the dominant credential, but you'll probably see, some changes as we go. One of our guys says that mobile credentials are just a pit stop on the way to biometrics.
Yeah, I, for one, would love to stop carrying a wallet with my credit card. Mostly I can do that, or my ID, like when I go to the grocery store, if I want to buy a bottle of wine for dinner on a Friday night, if I don't bring my wallet, I can't even use my credit card because they don't accept. And I know that there's something for first responders that was developed a few years ago that give them mobile credentials. Do you think that in just sort of the news and the mainstream media that's always talking about breaches makes some people more hesitant, even as businesses and organizations and facilities move towards this biometric, I don't know if you want to call it authentication totally, because like when you go into a grocery store, there are cameras there, and this is not new, but I think somehow in people's minds, that's different. If you're in a store, there are surveillance cameras. If you're in the airport, you're authenticating now, now you look into a little camera, they say, hey, we're deleting your data. But are people just not believing that's happening? And is the frequency of breaches, especially those in the authentication space, putting some roadblocks or obstacles in front of greater or quicker adoption?
Great points. I think privacy, kind of as a general topic, is probably the number one question that we get from customers for that exact reason. And a couple of things. One, just as a general distinction. So one of the things that we differentiate is the difference between face authentication, which is what we're doing, versus what I would call face recognition for surveillance, where you're pulling people out of a crowd and things like that. And at the end of the day, what people really want to know is, did I opt into doing this? And if I did opt into doing it, where's my data? If I choose, can I opt out of doing it? And there's, some things like that you can put in place that basically eliminate people's concerns. As long as people don't feel like they have to do something, then they're generally more willing to do that. And so for us, privacy is embedded in our entire platform. So from day one, we were thinking about how do we make sure that we're making sure people's data is protected. Can we have the tools to make sure that companies that are deploying these systems can do that easily? So we have built-in consent management and all these opt-out tools that do that. And as long as that is happening, as long as you're transparent with what's going on, we haven't had any problems with people wanting to adopt. And interestingly, you always have a few holdouts, but in nearly every case, once they see their coworkers or other people interacting with the technology and they're carrying their coffee in their bag, they're not fumbling for their badge, they're like, all right, maybe this is worth checking out after all. And so we have a very, very high adoption rate just because of that. In terms of breaches, that's another thing. It's important that companies think about these kinds of things. So there are standards bodies that look at that. So like there's a standard that's called ISO 27001, not to get too technical, but basically it defines how people are supposed to store data and so forth. And so as long as companies are doing those kinds of things like we are, and you can demonstrate that you're taking care of their data, you're protecting the data, you're treating the data ethically, all of these things, then we really haven't had a problem. And so it's important for any provider to do these things. Some do, some don't. And the ones that don't obviously are going to have a harder time, but the ones that do are the train's kind of left the station on that a little bit, and people are getting on board.
Is there any difference between US-based buyers and European-based buyers in their attitudes toward this technology?
Certainly, there's probably a little bit more scrutiny overseas. However, kind of opposite to that, so GDPR obviously is the big thing over there, and that's the most mature data privacy law of kind of all the data privacy laws. And when you look at it, biometrics is okay as long as you follow the rules that I mentioned before, which is to make sure people know they're participating, make sure you get written consent. If they choose to opt out, let them to do that. And as long as they do those things, then it's really not a problem. Certainly, there's occasionally some more things you have to do. So in some countries, they have data laws that say that the data has to stay in country, or things like that. So the architectures maybe change a little bit depending on if it's in the United States where you might have one database for your whole enterprise versus in Europe where you might have 6 or 7 different databases, but we have customers there that are utilizing the technology, and it's just really it's a matter of making sure you do it the right way.
Yeah, great. Well, segmentation is always good too. Data segmentation for the win.
Yes.
So I understand you're not storing the image, right? Like talking about making people comfortable with the technology. Part of that is allowing them, some transparency, allowing them to understand how it works and what's actually stored. So maybe help me out a little bit with like how does the hardware produce? And I like that you differentiated between facial recognition, which is the process of connecting a face to an identity, and face authentication, which is just kind of like a binary, yes, this is an authorized person, or no, it's not, right? So help me understand, like, what does that data capture look like? Like maybe talk a little bit about the hardware that you use, depth information, all that, and then what data is actually stored. I imagine a lot of people think a fingerprint reader has a TIFF image of your fingerprint, and a face scanner has like the full high-res photo of your face in it, right?
Yep. And there's some technologies that may still do that. Our technology does not. So again, by design, we want to make sure that we don't ever store images of people's face. We want to eliminate the PII. So basically, the way it works is when a person enrolls, we collect data on that person, and then we put it through a one-way algorithm that produces what we call a profile, which is basically just a blob, just a bunch of ones and zeros that then get associated to your badge number in the system, so that you're completely anonymized. And that blob, that piece of information is you can't reconstitute an image, you can't reverse engineer an image, so it's basically completely useless except for the purposes of doing authentication. So you could print it on the front page of the New York Times and nobody could do anything with it. And that's part of the privacy piece, is just making sure that you're using the right types of tools, you're doing AES encryption, all of these types of things. But even if you got through that, which you couldn't, but if you did, then the data still is useless for anybody else because of that. And then the second piece is that you've got the authentication, but you have to ensure that it's actually a live person standing there. And so our technology utilizes multiple different sensors to do what we call liveness detection, or to prevent what's known as presentation attack detection, which basically means, if I hold up a picture or a video of me, we can tell the difference between that and an actual person using three-dimensional data that it's captured during the process. And so it adds that next level of security for that. And of course, all those things happen, in fractions of a second. So the person doesn't really know any of that's going on, but that's what we're doing to, again, ensure that it's really the right person. It's authentically you, basically, that's standing there, and before we tell the system to let you in.
And also kind of, not just talking about maybe just let's spend a quick moment on attacks against it and error rate, because I imagine you can't get error rate down to zero. I've always heard with biometrics, there's some acceptable rate. Like, some people don't have fingerprints, some people don't have fingers, and I'm sure I don't know the answer to the question because I've never asked, but I'm sure you get often asked about identical twins, right?
Yep, we do. So I guess in terms of our particular, we call it a false positive identification rate. Our system's designed and optimized to be 1 in 100,000 probability of us making a mistake, thinking it's the wrong person, which is best in class for our modality. In terms of twins, Apple spent $100 million trying to solve the twins problem with their Face ID, and I have a buddy that has twins and daughters, and they can open each other's phones. So it is indeed one of the toughest challenges for any face manufacturer to do that. In cases where that is a problem, coupling it with a second factor, being a card or a PIN, eliminates that problem. But it's one of the things around the modality of face. It's just part of the thing. You get the convenience, but there are those certain corner cases that you just can't solve for.
So that's error rates. What about actual attacks against this modality of technology? I'm going to start using your terminology now.
Yeah, sorry about that. But totally right. So the most common thing that people do is, again, showing a video or a photo, or we get people all the time that spend an awful lot of time trying to spoof the device, and there are different levels of presentation attack that are defined by an ISO standard and so forth. And so for our device, we're pad level 1, which means all of the typical types of attacks where people would the types of tools that people would normally have, we prevent against that. And there's not I guess we don't have errors around that on that level. Certainly there are scenarios, if I mentioned Tom Cruise earlier. I mean, if you were to make a Mission Impossible style mask, why obviously there's vulnerability there. That's obviously not in the capability of the average person. But in terms of things that everyday people can do, our system is resilient to that, just again, based on the fact that we're capturing not only 2D images, but 3D images, and we're able to differentiate between those types of things.
Gotcha. Katie, any other questions before we wrap up here?
No, this has been great. It's really interesting, and it's no surprise that this is here. I love it, but I have to say I am one of those people who, when the "hey, save your passkey" pops up, and even though I'm in security, I'm still like, wait, what? And then I have to remind myself that I'm just getting old and averse to change. But I hope that this is this is actually the future, because we've been saying down with passwordless for probably, or down with passwords for at least 2 decades. So.
Yeah. No, and I like I say, I think again the unfortunate thing is that there have been other technologies that have maybe not done things exactly the right way, and so they're working against the kind of the movement. But I think there are many other companies like Alcatraz that are doing the right things to ensure that people's data is protected and are transparent about how they're doing it and so forth. And so hopefully we'll continue to move it forward. And so far the trend is going favorably. But again, it's all about making sure people understand what you're doing and make sure you do it the right way.
Right. There are always bad actors out there, and we're not just talking about cybersecurity either, right? It can be any industry, any kind of area. You could have somebody going 90 miles an hour down a residential street. Does that mean you're never going to drive again because somebody else is being irresponsible? No. But it's a hurdle. So I applaud you and your team.
Oh, thanks.
All right, Blaine, thank you so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today. This has been great.
Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate being here and for the opportunity.
Yeah, I hope I get a chance to use it at some point. Really looking forward to seeing it firsthand.
That would be awesome. We'll figure out a time to work that out.
All right. Stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to cover some news.